ISO is also known as film speed. I call it a photographer's best friend. Think of it as a gain up for the camera. You can take shots better in lower light, but what it also allows you to do, say if you're doing sports and you're getting a little blur because you can't get your shutter speed enough under the proper exposure, you can boost the ISO, giving you more latitude with the shutter speed, allowing you to get crisper pictures with movement. Also, with a higher ISO, you can focus better and get more depth of field because you have more latitude with the higher ISO of your f-stops. Now, what's the disadvantage to a higher ISO? And I'm talking about 1600 or above. In theory, you're going to see grain in the picture if you were to blow it up really big, so it won't be as a pure picture. Now, I say in theory because you have to blow something up really big to notice the grain a lot of times. So I tell people if they're that worried, print out a couple of 8x10 pictures, one at 400 ISO and one at 1600 ISO, and compare them. You're probably going to not see much of a difference, but you will see a difference if your ISO is not high enough and you don't have enough depth of field, or you don't have enough latitude to get the higher shutter speed. So let's take a look at ISO and how to set it on your camera now. I like to think of ISO as a digital gain up. Normally, if you, in a perfect world, you want an ISO of about 200, 300, but let's face it, you get into low light situations, you want to crank that up, or you may need a high shutter speed because you're doing a basketball game inside and you need that crisp. Well, you need to have some latitude there to adjust it. So I always tell people, if you're desperate, if you have a problem with blur or not dark enough pictures, solve it with turning up your ISO. You hold the button here, ISO at the top, use your command dial on the back, turn that puppy up, don't be afraid. In the old days, 1000 was really grainy, but with a camera like this, you can go to 1600, 2000, 2500. Now you got the latitude to shoot how you want, having less blur and having more depth of field. So, you know, I go out in jobs all the time, 2500, 3000. But let's suppose you didn't have time to do this and you wanted the camera to adjust. Well, do you know you can go into the menus, on the shooting menu, go all the way down to ISO sensitivity settings. Let me show you the one above there, high ISO NR. Well, if you're shooting, you know, at 4000 or 6000 ISO, which remember, will let in more light, great for lower situation, sometimes it adds a little noise. So I'm going to have that on normal, noise reduction. You could have it on high or low or on off. It takes a little bit more time to process the picture after you take the picture. So some people would want it off. I don't mind that extra second or two because it's going through the image and taking out bits of the noise. And the noise is there because you have a high ISO. So it's worth leaving that on. But let's go to these sensitivity settings. See, right now I'm at 3200, which is a good setting for sort of medium indoor light, no flash, say you're doing a wedding or whatever. But let's suppose you want the camera to figure out what's the best ISO. You can go to ISO sensitivity control and turn this on, and the camera will figure it out for you. Now the problem is, it could get a little noisy if it goes too high. So you set your sensitivity, in this case 3200, saying, I'm going to let the camera decide anywhere up to 3200 what the ISO or gain up would be. But you could set it to anything. We can set it to 5000, 6400. Well, let's set it to 4000. We're saying, you know what, ISO, go wherever you think is needed to get me the picture that I think I need based on my shutter and aperture. I call that up, and then you figure out. But don't go over 4000. Now, the other thing you can set while you're setting this ISO control is a shutter speed. So if you're doing sports and you're doing handheld and different things, you may say, you can adjust the ISO, and of course you're going to adjust the shutter speed if you're in shutter priority or whatever, but please don't go below 1/60th. So you're letting the camera figure it out, but you know under 1/60th, or to be safe, let's say 1/80th, you might be a little blurry. So you're telling the camera, do whatever the heck you want, but do not go under 1/80th of a second, and do not go over, you know, 3200 or 4000 ISO, because I don't trust those levels in terms of the noise with the ISO or the shaking with below 180. So you're putting limits. You're telling the camera, do whatever you want, but be home by 12. You know, do whatever you want, but just stay within these limits. And we are all set with that. And we're at 3200 sensitivity. I'm going to raise that to 5000. Now we're giving the camera some leeway, and we're ready to go out and shoot.